Hi, Gail.
Hi, Jane.
We're going to switch it around. I'm going to do the introduction. We're here to empower you and talk about saving yourself. So, our discussion was previous before we started recording. We were just talking about how underlying all saving type organizations or plans or governments, that there's a message underlying that somehow the power isn't within ourselves to no.
No, that the power is within ourselves. We don't have the power in the objective world.
Right, sorry, that's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have the power within ourselves, and we're not, because we were talking about having to an organization to save people that, well, not save people, but help people that need money, for instance. And I said, and you said to me, well, what's the assumption under that? And then of course that takes you back into the assumption that they don't have enough, where in my own subjective thinking, I can imagine them having enough and not have to do anything.
Other than
Imagine.
Well, I mean, this is a good opportunity again, yes, to lift them individually, but that assumption, that thinking, whatever's shown you that is showing you what's in your consciousness. So that's not something that fits anymore for you now that it's come to your awareness. Forgive. Everybody is abundant.
And
so that one person or group or whatever that showed you that, but just like that's something that's, no, I don't want that. That's not part of my reality.
Right. And well, and we were talking about how there's a lot of we're using our imaginations perhaps objectively, like trying to fix things out there again versus fixing the thing within ourselves. And when things are showing up in our reality that are showing us that maybe there's a lack of abundance, that just turning within and having the thought, oh, I see you in abundance. I see you with many blessings coming your way. Maybe that applies to even personal relationships. When I used to see people struggling, I would automatically assume that I needed to help them and pay attention to the struggle versus lifting them up in my mind and saying, oh, no, they don't think like that. I know they have that better safe space or place in their mind that is going to lift them up through this experience or whatever they're experiencing.
Well, you're lifting them up.
Yes.
Now, just to be nitpicky, safe space, what's the assumption with that?
But there's an unsafe space.
Yeah.
Right. So it's tricky.
It is. You have
really tricky.
And that's why, I mean, maybe this chat we're having really is about meaning and getting to that end, right? So what does that mean if you're lifting to a safe place? It means on some level you think there's an unsafe place.
Yeah.
And so that's the underlying assumption. And what I think for the most part want to do is not fix, but focus on what we want. So, and I think we may have talked about this before, but fixing something is still giving life to what you're fixing.
Yes.
Implying that, we're not fixing so everybody's abundant. That's just what everybody is. They're abundant. So we're not fixing that everybody is debt free because we're implying debt. And it sounds like a good thing, but we want to give life to debt? Exactly.
Yeah,
One, is it
that-
something you want to give life to? When you
yeah,
no, everybody's abundant. I forgive that, you can't pay that bill or whatever. Like, everybody in my reality is abundant,
right. And
coming from that place.
right. And I think for me, well, I've been watching a lot of commentary and, whether it's news or just people talking about stuff, and there is a lot of assumption in that things, well, especially when you're trying to give information that you think is helpful, then you have to be careful, because you want to make sure that, like you said, you're not assuming that it's already there, or you're working, it's like in relationship, then you're just working against yourself, because all you have to do is change your mind.
Right.
And it's,
Everything.
yes.
Everything is reflecting back to you what you believe or think within. So if it's not what you want, forgive, acknowledge, take responsibility for having once thought that way, but now everybody is XYZ, or that I'm XYZ.
Yeah.
So a good way to, when you're looking at your sort of inner conversation, is when you make a claim, make a statement. Well, what does that mean?
Yes.
And if it just means like it's raining out today, well, what does that mean? It means it's raining out. Okay, so is that what you want? Well, I would prefer the sun. Okay, so I forgive, that it's raining. I prefer the sun. So that's just like, okay, whatever. There's no real meaning to it other than it's what it actually objectively is. But if it's raining out today, what does that mean? Well, I can't go outside.
Right.
Well, I can't, it's a matter of, what do you want? I want to go outside.
So you're saving yourself
Oh.
from the narrative that you're creating. It's like you're always your own.
That's right. What does it mean to you? And if it's something that you don't want, like you had the cookie earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said, oh, I have these oatmeal cookies. They're really good. They're gluten-free and they're dairy-free. And so my response was, well, what does that mean? And you never actually answered, but
yeah, because I
have to be gluten.
know.
They're gluten-free because I'm allergic to gluten.
Yeah.
Dairy because dairy gives me pimples or something like that. Your answer, but just say that, for example. Right?
Yeah.
So you're finding out, just simply by asking that question to yourself and answering it, you're finding out about yourself, and you're actually giving secondary cause to your skin problems and your allergies.
Yeah. And that's like a really tricky one, because I can hear the narratives and like, oh, but I am allergic to that. I can't, if I ate that, I would be, and so even if I choose to eat those cookies, I could reframe it as, I really like using those ingredients because I like those ingredients.
Why not I love these cookies. They taste great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why not just that?
Yeah.
Get rid of all of the name. I love the ingredient. No. These cookies taste good.
Yes.
And then there's nothing attached to that.
Yes.
You love these cookies, which is abundance, right? You're in a feeling of abundance because you have something that you love.
Yes.
As opposed to having to go down, well, I like this ingredient, I like that ingredient. Well, this one I really don't, I don't know. But yeah, I like, it's just like a bunch of get your head spinning, right?
Yes.
These cookies, because I love cookies.
Yes. And like we were saying, it gets into other things that we do that with. Like
Oh, yeah.
right?
Anytime you say because, XYZ because LMNO POQS, and then you get into the big story, that is your story after because.
Yeah.
So I love these cookies because they're gluten-free, because they're dairy-free, because they're low calories, because they're then you're showing yourself or identifying a number of beliefs for yourself, or assumptions that you have that
And boy,
you're not those things.
I have a lot of assumptions. But and
Well,
then
we all do, right? We're all going along the same path. We have different experiences, and maybe you don't have the same beliefs and assumptions that I have, but I have my own that we're just, working on identifying. Does that fit? No, I don't think so. Or yeah, I'm cool with that.
and like I want to also say that assumption almost leads to judgment. Like it's sort of like I'm judging that thing to be good or bad, and that thing's good and that one's bad, so I'm going to choose that. So then there's an assumption, like you were saying, there's an assumption that there is a bad one instead of just getting rid of
an implication that there's a bad.
implication. So just get rid of all that and make simple, straight. Like it could be like with exercise we've talked about, I'm going for a walk. Well, and then you put the because on it, because I have to exercise every day. It's good for me. And if I don't, then something's going to happen. So there's like all these supportive narratives behind the scenes. So that's kind of when you're saving yourself from those narratives, I guess, would be a
right. I'm going for a walk because I love walking. Or I'm going for a walk because I'm going for a walk.
Yes.
I know I used to get caught up a lot in, what are you doing? Going for a walk because blah, 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 and like had to justify everything that right?
Yeah.
Verbal diarrhea to people, explaining, rationalizing why you're doing what you're doing. And it took a while to like, just, your question was a yes or no question. I'm yes. You don't have to answer more than that.
Yeah, it's a
rationalize. You don't have to justify yourself, because those are actually the stories that you're then creating.
Well, and it also takes you out of the now, like of what you're doing, kind of like if you're constantly analyzing. I know for myself, if I'm just in the moment and just here and now and all is well, then saving myself is really just sort of allowing that to be the narrative rather than, because I was thinking about it when I woke up this morning. I was laying in bed and I was like, oh, what do I have to do? And, like all these little questions start, you better get up soon, or, sleeping in's not good, or like just everything. There's like all these different expectations and things or little stories in my mind, and then I was able to just be like, oh, it's so nice just to lay in my bed. I love my bed. That was it.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like,
and
okay,
we come by them honestly, because there's so many rules in the objective world. Eat that, you get this. That it causes that.
yeah,
For that it causes that. Wear that, you're a this.
yeah,
You're that. There's just so many rules, and so you have to. You can't keep up. Well, we try to keep up with it, and there's all this, people having their challenges, because it's hard to keep up with what everybody expects and where you're living for other people and society's expectations and that sort of thing.
yeah. And it's almost like you don't have like a sense that you're making the decision if it's always like you're doing it because of this and because of that.
Well, you're always blaming.
Right.
Because, well, I did that because they said this. Well, I did that because they said that. And that's not coming from your power. But again, we've all been there.
Oh yeah.
All part of the growing of our growing and the pattern that we all experience.
And also very important, say someone says to you, well, why are you doing that? Because I get that. And I'll be like, before I'd be like, because
I am.
Well, no, before it was like, well, I'm entitled to do what I want and I don't have to explain to you. And I, blah, 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 like, you know, and then it's just kind of like, no, I'm just doing it. It's just what I'm doing. You know, the
Well, and the
answer
thing is, it's
that's what
very,
I'm
this
doing.
is all counterintuitive. So when you get to that place where I don't have to explain myself to anybody. I mean, if I want to tell them, I can tell them, but I don't, it's not a requirement in my life. When you get to that place where it's a yes or no, like whatever, I'll tell them, I won't tell them, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. I've made the decision already.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have fewer people saying to you, why are you making that decision? Why are you
Yeah.
Which is, it's all very counterintuitive. You wouldn't expect it, right? But that's exactly what happens. The more convicted you become with your decision and comfortable with it and natural with it, you don't get that outside questioning anymore because you're not projecting that out.
Yes. And having a sense of feeling with less narrative, there's less confusion, there's less opportunity for you to get lost in, like, if someone's asking you something, like if it's very simple, I find that there's really nothing more to ask. Like if you say why, if someone says, why are you doing that? You just says, oh, I don't know, I'm just doing it. Like, what is there more for them to feed on to keep creating?
Well, that's up to you.
Yeah.
That depends on your comfort level.
Right. And as long as
reflecting back to you.
Right. So if you're really convicted, then that comes across and then it comes back to you that way too.
Well, you just by it not showing up.
Right.
In your reality, or very less, it shows up less.
Yes.
You check your response. Like, are you reacting to that? What do they ask me that for all the time? When it's kind of like, once you're kind of natural, it's like, okay, because I am. Like, okay.
That's my go-to vision in my head with that, like, okay. I like that one. I'm always like, I always have you in my mind. I see your that come up in my mind sometimes, and I'll be like, oh yeah, you're funny.
And the giggle.
Yeah.
Laughing is very powerful.
Yeah, we were talking about that too, where it kind of shows you where you're at with yourself. If you can just sort of, yeah, like today, for instance, there had been some conversation around with my dad about some stuff, and I was just convicted in that I wasn't going to let it phase me at all. And I saw him today, so it was just like nothing had ever happened, like nothing, like, because I haven't entertained any thoughts, like stayed all as well. He thinks way different. He thinks about how great it is just to have time together and hang out. And I think a lot of my issues in relationship were that I was doing that thing where I was always feeding into it when I wasn't even with the person. Like, well, what are they going to say?
That's a lot of our natural until we consciously change that. When we consciously aware of how we live our lives and how our lives play out and are created, then we start to change that. But I mean, that's kind of like, we're all there, right?
Yes.
Point of becoming aware. That's how reality is created. I mean, if it's, as much as it's not really what we may want, I mean, it gives us our experience. Those thoughts that you have are creating, are all around in your realities or else it'd be just empty space.
Right.
What can you learn from empty space?
Also,
Like,
yeah, and also like in imagining, like let's just use conflict as an example. Like just because someone's in conflict with you, you don't have to be in conflict with them. And I think I had somewhat of an assumption, or my thoughts would always go to the conflicted part of that rather than the loving part, like how being present in the idea that, oh, okay, I can choose. I don't have to, just because someone's in conflict or like with my dad, like having these thoughts, I don't have to entertain them. I don't have to pay attention to them. I can just,
well, you don't even have to assume that their thoughts relate
right,
to conflict. What if your perceptions that that's just the way he talks,
right.
as opposed to, oh, he's mad.
Actually, that's what my yeah, that's what my cousin actually said to me, reflected to me before he came. He was like, "We're talking about your dad, right? That's that's your dad." Like, I was like, oh, I know, but and again, it was always me choosing to engage in it and create and pay attention to. So it just shows me that I can not do that, which is great.
Right. Well, and a lot of times it comes down to, like, today you were out with your parents. So how do you want it to be?
Yes.
Want it to be enjoyable?
Yes.
Want it to be walking on pins and needles and angry and
Yes. Yes.
right? So how
And
do
I
you
had,
want your now to be?
yes. And I'd done that in my head before I
Right.
got there. I was like,
And
oh,
I
this
think
would be great.
recognizing that if you're responding, reacting based on something that happened even a minute ago, you're living in the past
Yeah.
and bringing it to the now
Yes.
and recreating it.
Mhm.
That's the hard thing to kind of get your mind around and remember, because we do get caught in these rabbit holes and the emotions that are in those states, I should probably say, rather than rabbit holes.
Mhm.
But the more, for me, the more I understand, the easier it is to pull myself out. Like, oh, because there's no judgment then against myself, right? There's no blame on myself, like, oh, what'd you do? What'd you get here for? Why'd you get here again? I'm like, oh, okay, here, I see what's happening. And now that's not how I think. I forgive and I'm this
Yeah. It's,
way, or I look this way, or whatever.
yeah, it's really, really helpful. Like, oh, wow. Like, it's, I know we talk a lot about it and it's difficult to, it really always comes back to that. It comes full circle back to your own responsibility for how you're thinking, how you want to go, like without being like, because I was always taught the opposite. You know, if someone's doing so, you have to somehow respond to that, which
Were you?
I think so.
Were you?
Not anymore. I don't have to.
See, you don't give that excuse to yourself. And I know you're focused on being the new man, as opposed,
Yeah.
but don't give that
Right.
excuse to yourself
Right.
that, well,
Right.
I was always taught this.
Right. Right.
You can
Yeah.
recognize it, you can acknowledge it, but not that you were taught, but I used to accept
Yes.
responsibility for it. I used to accept that, you had to
Yes.
give your life away to other people.
That's actually more accurate, probably too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because you don't want to blame.
mm-mm,
As soon as I was always taught this by them, or they always told me to do this.
yeah,
Getting into blame, there's
victim,
power in blame.
yes, or being a victim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
there.
So I think,
We're kind of a little bit all over the place there with that.
yeah,
But I guess the point, make a long story short, is what meaning are you giving, and recognizing that any reasons you give for something, any excuses you give for something, anything after because is your story that you're telling yourself. And it's a good place to decide if that works in your reality or not. If it's the new man or if it's just the old man.
mhm,
Do what's appropriate. You know, if it's not what you want, forgive. I used to think that way. I don't anymore. Now I think, and whatever you prefer. And also focus on what you want, not fixing.
yes,
Because there's something you want that will take care of that problem without giving life to that problem.
yes, yes,
That's what you want to find.
yes.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Subscribe, share, any questions,
Like,
please put them below, and we'll see you again. See you, Jane.
bye, Gail. Bye, everyone.